Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video called Jante Law, the laws that really rule in Scandinavia. I don't think I've ever heard of the term Jante, do not know how that's pronounced, law, but it's making me a little scared. I don't know why. There's something about the name that makes me think of like medieval torture-like devices. Maybe, again, I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with this. I'm just saying, like, the name itself, like, it evokes something not that pleasant. I have no idea what it could mean. Hopefully it's not something bad, but again, just to name, I'm thinking of like, I don't know, again, it's I don't know, Jante Law. Again, sounds something like medieval, sounds scary. Hopefully it's not scary and it's a good thing. Also, like, laws do not have to mean like something bad, like laws are neutral. However, there's something about the name that's making me like, oh my god, am I gonna be executed? Hopefully not, but you know, we never know. I know how weird Scandinavia actually is like, but maybe we're gonna actually be learning and have to like stop being scared. So let's check it out and comment, like, and subscribe.
Jante Law right here.
Okay, what is it? Okay, and it's a hidden rule.
Is a set of rules that supposedly dictates how you should behave.
Okay, so it's like, to begin with, it's just like a term like the Ten Commandments, but they're hidden. So how am I gonna supposed to know if they're hidden? I have to know about them. It says the Ten Commandments of Jante Law discourage individual superiority and ambition. Okay, it's like tall poppy syndrome. Okay, makes sense. Like, it sounds less scary if you tell me this.
You're not to think you're anything special.
Out of context, that sounds crazy because it's like oh my god, you're putting someone, like, imagine telling this to a kid. It sounds a little like, oh my god, you're putting this child down.
Mustn't think you are good at anything.
Thou shalt not think you are better than me.
The better than me, I agree, but like, you're not good at anything. Doesn't that create like self-esteem issues, especially like with kids?
You're not to think you can teach us anything.
Everyone knows what it is, and they know what they should do if they want to fit in. And they also know what will happen if they don't fit in.
It's a way of...
What happens if you don't fit in? Or you're gonna be like out of like punish, or like they'll take you outside of the country?
Socially stigmatizing people that break the rules.
And maybe there is something in that that has created these incredibly successful societies.
That makes a good point. Like, I'm here criticizing, but it's like, if any like societies, like Scandinavian societies, are like so far ahead of like the others, that I'm the one that's in the wrong here. Who created this? Was it some guy named Jante Law? No, this isn't Jante Law. The law is the law, so it was again Jante.
There is no Scandinavian utopia, but to the extent that there is one, I'm sure that Jante Law is a part of it, because what people often fail to realize is that you can't have it both ways. Complete individuality, where everyone just ignores the rules and still have a harmonious, equal society. It doesn't work.
I think I agree. Like, well, it's a little bit of that, of like what we owe to each other. Like, being part of a society means that you have to owe respect to other people. That's how a successful society works. You just, you don't exist in a bubble.
Work that way, so you get to choose.
They grow up weary.
I've felt it.
Is it a little bit of like, oh, you're like, Santa is bringing you coal like during Christmas if you don't like behave properly? But this is like 10 times worse, because it's like actual, like, it's not during Christmas, it's every single day of your life.
A lot of times, and I think most people do.
What happens if you break the law?
Cosmopolitan Scandinavians love to say, Jante Law, that's something for the people out in the provinces, but it exists in every city as well.
Oh, it's seen as something like, oh, the countryside people, like, as seeing, like, it's not something, I don't know, like, oh, like, those are like the country bumpkins that do that. They believe in weird things. Okay, good to know.
And that affects the choice of cars that people buy, it affects how they dress, it affects how they behave.
The British...
I think that's always like really weird to me, that they have like a monarchy. If they are so into like everyone's an equal, then how are you still like into monarchy then? Like, doesn't, like, by principle, even though if they're pretty humble about it, like, they're still the king and queen, right? So it's like, that's so weird to me.
Society has a class distinction where you can do a lot of things because you're rich or because you have a background.
I don't think it's just a British society. I think like every society has this. Of course, like rich people like privilege.
Whilst Janteloven is trying to say, no, you can't, because we're a lot of people here and we get to decide the rules, not you alone.
But doesn't that apply to, like, again, the king? The king gets to live in a palace because he's a king and has money. Like, that doesn't apply to the normal, like, Swede. Yeah, who invented this?
Jante Law started off as a work of fiction.
I think it's translated as a fugitive, thank you, a fugitive crosses his tracks.
As a satire
What?
on small-town Scandinavia in the 1930s. It was part of
Oh, okay, it's the 1930s. I thought that was something that, I don't know, went on. It has been going on for like 500 years. Okay, good to know the context.
a novel by Axel Sandermoser.
This is
That's so
Axel.
recent.
This is my grandmother. And here is one of the mistresses. He is
Oh my
my
God.
grandfather. And
So
he was
this-
an author. He was drinking a lot. He was
Okay.
not very nice to his children and wives.
Okay, so like the Jante Law creator was not a good person. Okay, that's crazy.
And here is Axel when he heard the name Jante.
He called the town Jente, but it was based on Nykøbing.
What is that?
He thought about the mentality that he felt there was there and crystallized it in this concept of Jantelån. Anything you do that seems out of the ordinary or ambitious or not conforming would be sort of punished by the community looking down on that.
Oh, that's how they scared kids. Okay, it's like, oh, you're gonna be ostracized from society if you do not behave properly, and if you are ambitious, or maybe like you think that you're better than someone else.
Now, he meant it as a satire. Over
Okay.
time, over the decades, it's almost become like an informal Scandinavian Ten Commandments. The
Okay,
satire
why?
aspect has almost been forgotten, and people kind of think it is how they should behave.
That's crazy. Okay.
I want to do my own stuff in my own way and not being like labeled as an outcast.
How far does the ostracization like comes along? Like, how much of an outcast are you? Like, do you not like your family and your friends are gonna turn their back on you, or is it more about like I'm feeling like a shift like in perception from people, or is it like an actual thing of like this actually happens, and is it actually like a sort of like scary tactic, or does it actually happen? No, seriously, people you're not gonna be able to like socialize with someone and with people outside of like of anyone, because you're definitely gonna be seeing like another, and they're not gonna mess around with you.
You're not like any other girls. You're not like typical Norwegians. Like, no, we're not.
Okay, a
I
band
think
isn't
it
like
can
musicians.
become sort of a prison because you don't encourage
Individuality.
greatness.
How many people would want to belong to a vision like that?
Okay, I like it because it's like it's symbolic thing of like we should move past this. But actually, starting like the origins were like it was satire. Like I mean, it makes sense a little.
Jante Law is something that we're stuck with inside of us.
I think it's always there.
That kind of way of thought may well simply be so deeply embedded. Maybe it won't go away.
The interesting
Maybe.
thing, I think, is that every society has those social stigmas.
The great thing about Jantelån is it forces you to think about what those unspoken rules might be that govern your life. And so there's the first road to freedom and getting away from those rules.
What you should do
It's crazy to me that yes, of course they're like reckoning with this sort of like, hey, we don't have to live like this, and why am I like acting this way? Is it because like some guy decided this? But it's kind of crazy.
is choose those that make the better society, and those Janteloven that we have, which is you shouldn't think you're better than everyone else, is probably the best way of organizing a society.
Correct.
If you could click your fingers right now and Jante Law would all go away, would you do it?
No.
Okay. So even then are like, I don't know if we should. Okay, this was very interesting. It was I went to like this stage of thinking, oh well, it wasn't like it isn't like such a scary situation. It isn't like a scary law, but then it was like, no, really, it is. What's crazy to me is that it started as satire, and apparently like by not this like great guy. It wasn't like this, I don't know, incredible thinker of its time, this philosophical, I don't know, whatever. No, it was just like some guy that apparently was not like a very good person. And he just like started doing this. He was just a writer that wanted to like do a little bit of satire. And then he like spitballed into like this way of like how like Swedish people and just Scandinavian people live their lives in general. So it is like, oh my god, okay, like calm down. Like if I can't remember the name of the actual writer, like the Jante Law like writer, but it, like if he was alive, I would probably like be like, if has anyone asked them like, what do you think of people actually taking this way too seriously? Probably he was like, I do not agree with this because it was satire and you shouldn't like you should not like live your life this way. I do think like it's kind of crazy because there are some like good things about this. I think like the fact of like, oh, you're not thinking that you're like better than someone else, that should be a good rule of thumb just in general. Like, yes, people are not better than others. I think that's an arbitrary concept. Like, we're all humans. So it is kind of like, you know, it's a good thing that, you know, they kind of like they teach you this. I think in a lot of like societies, and just again, just like by being people in general, like no one's better than somebody else. But they sort of like they teach you this and sort of like this general concept in your general sort of education in a lot of cultures. Like it's not just Scandinavia that has this. I think that a lot of like societies in a lot of countries like do like look down on just again at like, oh, if you think like I'm better than someone else because I have more money or I have access to, I don't know, better jobs, better education, whatever. Like there is just like it's looked down upon. Like you shouldn't think that way because again we're all humans. So on one hand, I like that, and again a lot of like other cultures have this. But the fact that they take it like one step ahead of this, of like you shouldn't think like, for instance, that you're like better than someone else at a certain like skill or at a certain like element. It's not about being better people or a better person than the other. It's more about, well, when it comes to like skills, for instance, it's just like a fact of life. You know, some people are like better at, I don't know, math, or better at building like a rocket ship. I don't know, like there are certain things that are just like, I'm not like looking down on you because you can't build, you know, you can't build a computer. Well, no, it's just like that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not good at something else. It just means that you're maybe bad at this particular area and maybe someone else is good at at building this. So on one hand, I think again, it shouldn't be a bad thing for me to say maybe, oh, I'm good at fractions. I'm good at, I don't know, doing numbers. Like, okay, well, that should be good. And again, and especially I think with kids, it's like, oh, well, that should be maybe encouraged. Like if you see a kid that's like very good at, I don't know, like in terms of like as actual skills like people have, but just like maybe like let's say someone like a kid is very good at math, a lot of like teachers would actually like encourage that. Oh, you're good at math, like it's a good thing. Like who knows what you could actually become when you're an adult if you actually follow this pattern, and if you like it and if you continue on. Maybe like we could have like, I don't know, science. It's not all scientists are good at math. That you know, sort of like that's the general idea. Like, oh, we can have like you don't know like if this kid in like 50 years, 40 years is going to have like this huge scientific breakthrough. And oh, it all started maybe because he was good at math or he was good at science when he was a kid, and that was encouraged. So on one hand, like I think that's a good thing because again, it creates like great adults in like that actually if you actually foster those skills. But it shouldn't like, I don't know, is it seen as bad apparently over there? Like, no, you shouldn't think you're good at something. It's like, well, actually that's the one I'm like, isn't that weird? Because I think in a lot of, in different cultures, again, you sort of like are encouraged to see like, oh, what actually you're good at, and actually foster that, whether that is sports or again, some sort of like mental skill, whatever. It's like you are encouraged to actually work on that because it's like, oh, it's a good thing. If you like it, well, incredible, because you like it and you're good at it. Like, isn't that the dream? So it's like a little weird to me that they do not like, no, you shouldn't think that you're like good at something. And also I think it's like very I don't know. It's like, am I just gonna deny? Like, if I'm a genius, and if I'm some sort of, and you don't have to necessarily be a genius. Just because if you're like really good at something, like, why should you be humble about this and think, oh no, I'm not good. I'm not good at this. It's like, well, if you're just good at something, at like playing guitar, like, why should you be humble about it? Not that you're gonna be like, oh my god, I'm like the greatest guitar player that has ever existed. No, because again, there's like a little balance. You have to have humility, because I think like at the end of the day, everyone can benefit from learning new things, and you never are gonna reach like your capacity of like, oh, I have already learned everything there is to know about this particular subject. Like, I'm good, I'm done. It's like, no, that never happens. That's never gonna happen. You're constantly gonna be learning. Like, there's no cap. It's like, no, either whether that is some sort of skill, whether that is science or some sort of like instrument, whatever. It's like, no, you're never gonna be like just I reached my limit. No, you're always gonna be learning. So you're never gonna be like, I'm like the greatest that has ever existed in this particular like area. No, of course not. But if you're good at something, that's an objective thing. It's not being me like, oh, people think that I'm good at this. No, if you're good at something, like, well, you're just good at something, and that's it. That's just a fact of life. So it's kind of weird to me that they're like, they do not encourage that. It's like, no. You should say, like, you should take, a piece of like of humble pie and be like, no, I'm not good at this, which is like crazy, because it's like, if you're good at something, just like go and own it. Like, that's a good thing. Of course, you shouldn't take it to the limits, because no one likes a show off. But I think it's maybe like it's the hard part of like finding the right balance between being good at something and, but still, and being like, yes, I'm objectively good at this. However, it's not that I'm declaring myself the greatest that has ever existed. I'm still like, there's still room to learn. There will always be room to learn, and that's a good thing. But maybe there's like a little balance, and there's like a line that you shouldn't sort of like cross, and you should always like stay, again, sort of like in that middle ground. So on one hand, I think like that's maybe not that good, but on the other, like, it's like there's so many things, because again, it's like it works for Scandinavian societies, because apparently like they're so advanced that it's like that. But however, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about like the Jante's Law, and me saying Scandinavian societies tend to be like better than other societies. That goes against Jante's Law, right? Because if no one's better than the other, and you shouldn't actually say no one's better than someone in this particular thing, so I shouldn't be saying that, right? Like, I shouldn't be saying, and they themselves shouldn't be thinking that about themselves. We're not thinking, Scandinavians do not think, oh, we're more advanced than Americans or British or Germans or whatever. It's like, no, you shouldn't be thinking like that. Isn't that contradicting yourself? I think it just creates like this huge thing of like, wow, I have to like rethink my whole life. And I think it just creates like a lot of things. So maybe I'm just overthinking this, but again, it's just like me, like if I'm imagining myself like having a conversation, like I think you can bring a lot of like interesting points, but it can also lead to like, again, somebody like, do I have to like rethink my whole life? And that's one of the things that one of the women mentioned is like, that also happens, right? Like, it's good that people are sort of like waking up and realize we don't have to live our lives this way. And not just because of like Jante's Law or whatever, any sort of law that is so restrictive, or it's just this like invisible law. And I get what they mean with this. It's like, it's not technically, it's not like written in the Constitution. It's not an actual law. It's not you break it, you're going to jail. No, it's just sort of like those social sort of like constructions that we have, sort of like the invisible laws of society that exist, that are put in place so just by being human and interacting with other people. Nothing's written, but it's like an unspoken rule that we all, because we all live in a society and we're all humans, so we all tend to like, practice this. So on one hand, it's sad, and I think it's a good thing that no law and no unspoken law should dictate how you act. And I think it's a good thing that they're sort of like waking up and saying, not just like Jante's Law in general, like again, no law should actually like make you act in a certain way when it comes to this. Obviously laws are in place for a reason, like you shouldn't just go around and kill people or whatever. No, but when it comes to this sort of like societal rules, I do agree that it's a good thing that you're sort of like waking up and realizing, who is this guy? Why is it like, and why should he dictate, or what a couple of like rules should dictate how I act and how I live my life? Like, not necessarily. I think, again, as long as you're not harming other people, and again, if you live your life being like, you're happy and you're not harming anyone else, and you're contributing positively to society, then like why should you like be sort of like restricted by this own set of rules? That's crazy. And I think also like this, I think this sort of like this particular set of rules, I think discourage a little bit of like that individuality that a lot of cultures and other societies have. But I do know that maybe Scandinavia, like that's really like that's this like no, you're again, it's like the tall poppy syndrome. Like they're not, it's not seen as good if you stand out. So maybe again, but that's a cultural thing. So I don't know how, like I think there's gotta be a balance between like it's completely disencouraged and you're gonna be ostracized from society, but also again there's like a middle ground for you to actually find yourself. And again, because I don't have to act or I don't have to live in my life in a particular way just because this Jante Law says it. Like if I'm not feeling it, if it doesn't go along with like my worldview, like then why should I be doing this? So again, there's gotta be like a better sort of like a balance. I think everything in balance should be probably the easiest sort of like explanation. However, I do think like this is a really hard subject. I think like it was a very interesting subject that I think could be expanded upon and it could be discussed like for a really like for a bunch of hours. This whole thing I think can be debated and it's really interesting. But I think probably what I'm coming along with, like in this particular sort of like area, again some of my thoughts, at least like early on, it's like there's gotta be a balance, right? Like not you don't have to go to extremes. There's gotta be a balance that still, you take into account like the positives, and then maybe you try to like diminish sort of like the negative aspects of this. But this was incredibly interesting, and that was it for today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.